I was invited to a thing where they wanted to celebrate fellow women creators who had contributed into the success of Netflix.
I think I'm talented as a musician. I'm practicing and such. I plan to make the move to Mumbai. How can I get my first singing gig?
How are you going to sustain yourself if you don't have a solid base of your craft?
If I were to be born without any inherent singing talent, could I still be a good singer? So how can you write the lyrics when you don't know the tune?
For that last video, we only had 25 minutes in hand and we went by so fast, and that is my most viewed video so far. 10 or 15 million views on that goddamn video. And that song actually ended up changing the trajectory of my entire career.
What were some of the first experiences now that stand out in terms of kickstarting your musician journey?
I remember this one occasion that my HOD actually called my father and threatened to basically rusticate me on the grounds that I have a YouTube channel.
Welcome to the Ready Set Do podcast, where we learn from journeys of not experts who are just 2 steps ahead of us.
I'm Naman Pandey, and in this episode, featured not expert is Trishita Recs. Trishita is an award-winning playback singer and songwriter whose work has been featured on Netflix, HotStar, Zee5, among other notable places such as live events and concerts. Perhaps like most of you all out there, one of my longest standing loves of life has been my love for music. Having spoken to a DJ on this podcast, link in description and here, this time I wanted to explore this theme from a more traditional viewpoint. Trishita walks us through how she was exposed to the world of music as a child through participating in singing reality TV shows. We go over her process of coming up with new songs, performing live, and really balancing the art with the business side of things, such as landing gigs, finding work, and forging a sustainable income source through her talent. Indeed, it was rather eye-opening to contextualize the struggle artists face, and by the end of this episode, you will definitely learn to appreciate the grit and determination it takes to even have a shot at making it. In keeping with my goal of learning from guests who are just 2 steps ahead of us instead of an expert, my goal with this episode is to highlight Trishita's unique journey and how she continues to navigate so many challenges to trailblaze a career as a singer in such a competitive landscape. This is the Ready Set Do podcast, and to support it, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and or leave me up to a 5-star rating on Spotify or your music app of choice. And now, my dear friends, here's Trishita. Trishita, welcome.
Thank you so much, Naman.
It's so good to be finally sitting down, at least virtually,
Yeah.
to talk to you. And
Mhm.
yeah, let's talk about singing. So my first question is, and this is something I've always actually wanted to ask, somebody that knows their stuff. If I were to be born without any inherent singing talent, could I still be a good singer just based off practice and such, or am I just doomed forever?
So I do think that a certain degree of a knack is necessary, I would say. Like if
Okay,
you are someone who is naturally very, very tone deaf, it's challenging, but I would still say that it's not impossible to sing. It's possible, but these things are often the degree of how good or bad you are can also be very subjective.
that's
So
true.
it's definitely possible, but there does need to be a certain basic understanding of, rhythm as well as melody. That
So when
always
you
helps.
say tone deaf, just to make sure I'm understanding this correctly, what you're referring to is when there's a shift in a song from a certain scale to a certain scale, I'm able to pick that up when I listen to that. Is that what being tone deaf means?
Correct. So if you can hear a certain frequency or a sound, are you able to identify and replicate it? That is usually
Interesting.
because if you can do that, then you are capable of learning. And by learning, then you can become better. So
That
that
makes
helps a
sense.
lot.
That
Yeah.
makes sense. So for you, when did it all start? When, like, can you walk us through maybe early childhood when you first started singing? And then maybe at what point you finally decided that this could actually be, something you build your career out of?
So I think I was 4 or 5 since I used to go, like, I'm a Bengali girl, so I used to always have singing and dance
Uh-huh.
classes. And at first, I was just kind of accompanying my sister when she would go to her class. And then slowly that turned into a situation like that was my mother's me time in her entire day, that she would just like get rid of the two kids, have like a couple of hours to herself. That was why I was there. There was like no other reason why I was there. And that kind of turned into this one particular occasion where, uh, my sister or someone was singing and they were preparing for one of their upcoming exams and they forgot the words. And I
Oh,
finished it. And I was so little, and everyone was like, how does she know it? Because I was just sitting there and I kind of just like learned it by listening.
yeah,
And then my sister's teacher spoke to my mother that, I'm not sure about this one, but this little one you should really consider putting her into, like, because my primary at that time was more of Kathak and dancing.
I see.
But, it was back then I was living in a very small town in MP. So the thought was that there weren't a lot of teachers there. So what to
Hmm.
prioritize? And my dance teacher kind of ended up leaving the town. So I didn't have a choice. Like I always wanted to keep going to
Interesting.
stage.
Yeah.
So kind of like the singing thing ended up happening very accidentally. It wasn't really like planned or something. And eventually, as I grew up, I tried several different things, but like, I think nothing brought me as, like, I didn't do anything with as much confidence or ease as
Hmm.
I did this with, like it continues to be the same. And it just was like a very natural, uh, choice for me. Like,
Yeah,
it never
makes sense.
really, yeah,
Right.
it never really came across as like until the pandemic, at least, it was a very clear decision in my head that this is what I was meant to do and this is what I was going to do. And I just kind of kept following it. There were certain years in my life that I fully kind of backed away from it a little bit because I experienced a
Hmm.
lot of fatigue. I was doing it for so long, from such a young
Yeah,
age. And again,
true.
I was like one of those reality show kids or one of those extremely seasoned kids in like the local competition circuits or like school fests and all of those things. And by the time school ended, I was really tired. Like I really thought, my God, can I stop for a little bit? So I think in college, I really didn't do much for like 2, 3 years. I was just studying and
Interesting.
understanding, is there anything else I could do? And then I did other things that I didn't like it. So I came back. I
You
was like,
came
no,
back.
no,
Yeah.
this
No,
is it
it
for me.
right, and it just helps that as they say, it's only when you've run away from home that you realize how great home actually is.
Yeah.
So maybe in a way, maybe you needed to do that. I'm curious about what you said about the reality show kid. Can you
Hmm.
talk a little bit more about that? That sounds very juicy.
Yeah, well, so basically, like I mentioned, I was growing up in like till I was 14 years of age, I was in a really small town called Satna in Madhya Pradesh. And back then, there weren't a lot of us from that area who had made it into the national or international television shows. It
Yeah.
was a really big deal, and I was really, really seasoned, like I said, in those local, like everybody knew me in
Uh-huh.
that area. And
Nice.
I was among some of the few of us who broke that ceiling, who took a lot of these
Hmm.
very small town kids onto like a national platform. But at the same time, it was extremely difficult to be there because I
Hmm.
was only like my peers on that show. I was only like 11 or 12 years old at the time.
Oh
And the
wow, that's young.
pressure,
Yeah.
yeah, and the pressure is enormous, because
Hmm.
you have this entire sense of like, am I disappointing my whole town? Because I'm creating this platform, and I'm one of the first to be doing it. What
Hmm.
if I mess it up? So there's a lot of pressure that kind of comes at a very young age, and it's like really not good because a lot of what goes on there is not even authentic. So it's really hard to, like, I really don't think it's the right place for children to be. Like, having been through that myself now, I can say it with a lot of confidence that yes,
Hmm.
adults, we can all regulate ourselves much better. But I don't think like when our frontal lobe is like not even developed is the time
True.
to be putting such pressure on ourselves, because it could really lead to very permanent long-term repercussions for a lot
Mhm.
of people.
Yeah, I mean that it does sound like that's a really heavy weight on some rather young shoulders.
Yeah.
Would me or any of our listeners know the like platform, what it was called by any chance?
Oh, should I say it?
Oh, I
No,
don't
but
know.
like
Sorry,
it was a
I don't know if
format that
that's up to
no, no,
you
it's
to
not.
decide.
It's not a big deal. It was several years ago. It was like a chapter of Voice of India, but it
Oh,
did
okay.
not. Yeah, it did not like. It was one of the those that never got done again because the concept in itself was really flawed. Like it was something called
Interesting.
Mummy Ke Superstars, and so
I,
if you
I
were
actually know. I have definitely heard of that. Yep.
how ridiculous, right? So like every time you are in like the danger zone, your mom's supposed to sing and save you. So it doesn't
Yeah,
matter how good you
that's
are if your mom can't sing. And trust me, I got eliminated and my mom till date lives with that guilt. Like now we can laugh
oh
about it, but
gosh.
it was a huge traumatic thing back then because again, we both were carrying a lot of responsibility on our shoulders when we were in the show. And it was not a fun experience for like either of us. Now it's really funny to look back and like laugh at it. But
Yeah.
it was like a really bad time.
That's, yeah, I mean, I have so many thoughts on that, but yeah, whoever thought
Yeah,
that would be a good idea? Like, that doesn't even make any sense because are you finding out if the child is a good singer or them and their parent as a duo? You know, like it
I
just
was.
makes no sense, but interesting. So yeah, I'm honestly surprised that despite all of that, you've, stuck to this whole sphere, so to speak. You must really enjoy it, is what I'm trying to say. Um, but then, yeah,
Or maybe
then
I
you,
suck at everything else. Who knows? It's either or,
I guess
you
that's
never
true.
know.
But
Yeah.
as somebody that has heard you sing, I disagree. But of course, that could very well be it. I don't know. Um, Something you said about once you were in college that you took, a little break. I do want to explore that just a little bit because, and maybe more so with the lens of what was the end of that break? Like, at what point were you in your head that I've tried these other things, I've tried keeping away, um I need to go back? Was there a specific moment or something that led to that, or was it just organic and gradual?
So to be very honest, simultaneously, like alongside the entire college journey of mine, first of all, I went to a college which was very academically inclined. So they were
Mhm,
very clear from the very start that this is not a place for you to be, really going deep into extracurriculars. If that's what you're here for, then this is
mhm.
not the right place for you. In fact, I remember this one occasion that my HOD actually called my father and threatened to, basically rusticated me on the grounds that I have a YouTube channel. That was the reason she wanted to throw me out of the college. And
Wow.
when she called my father, she said, Mr. Mitra, I'm gonna, let your child go. And my dad was just like, oh, when? Because my parents aren't like very supportive of what I do. So, but the real honestly, like if I'm to say the truth of that entire phase of my life is that there was a lot of turbulence even in my personal life. Like I wasn't really in a good space. Like I wasn't particularly happy with my friendships, and I was in a
Mhm,
relationship at the time that wasn't really like a great one for me. So I
mhm.
just felt like that entire phase really took me away from a lot of things that I love, you know, and this being one of them. And but I'm
Interesting.
like I have no regrets of having done that, because
Yeah.
whatever caused it, it's fine. Like, I can't change the past. But the conclusion of it was just that, like, after, really eradicating a lot of these negative things and people and, situations from my life, I just started to reconnect with a lot of, habits and
Mhm.
practices that did initially make me feel very grounded. And getting
Amazing.
back to my practice and Riyaz was one of them. So that kind of
Interesting.
slowly brought me back to the field, and that's when I started to kind of explore going into the industry slowly.
Awesome. That makes perfect sense. And yeah, in terms of your arc, it sounds like you had a few highs as a child, and then you had these lows as you were, once you were in college, but then had those highs again. So I guess for adult Trishita, what was the start of your, musician journey, I should say, because I know that it's much, much more than just being a singer. You're basically an entire business wrapped under the, foil of, well, sorry, wrapping the foil of a singer. So, what were some of the first experiences now that stand out in terms of, kickstarting your musician journey?
So, the first thing to know here is that my full-time music journey properly hadn't even started until like 2 years ago. So,
Interesting. Okay.
majority of the things that like some of the very life-defining things have happened for me very, very quickly. So, during
Awesome.
the pandemic, right before the pandemic is when I was starting to kind of dip my toes back into the
Hmm.
field, right?
Hmm.
Like 2018, I graduated college. 2019, I was starting to go back, and 2020 pandemic happened.
Yeah.
So 2020 to 22, 24, I didn't really even do much because again, that was a time when I was really very, like in very poor health,
Hmm.
poor mental health, like a lot of us, right? It was a huge shock for many
Yeah.
of us. And
Yeah.
especially for my industry, my work life just kind of came to a standstill before it even started. So it was a very disturbing time. So whatever I have done, it has happened after 22,
Got it.
essentially. So, how it began for me was simply that I was releasing a lot of music during the pandemic. And that's the time I actually devoted to, learning how to write, learning how
Hmm.
to compose and those things, because I realized that I had a different texture of like vocals, and
Hmm.
not a lot of people were like eager to hire me to sing.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of systematic, sexism in this where you'll notice one thing that predominantly, Bollywood movies are very hero-centric. Nowadays, it's changing a little bit.
Yeah.
And when it's a hero-centric movie, there's like a full guy song with like a couple of female lines.
Yeah.
And therefore, what happens is because it's essentially a guy song, the female is really like the woman is not really been even considered, the female singer is not being considered when the key is being set, when the
Hmm.
melody is being written, because uska to
Interesting.
do hi line hai na, like she
Right.
only has two lines, so she's just gonna have
Right.
to adjust with the rest of it. And that was really
Ah.
a frustrating situation because a lot of times these two lines were out of my range, or I'm
Hmm.
having to sound like a certain singer, and my
Hmm.
real texture would never really even come out. And that really was putting me in a very irritating position where I was like, you know what, if no one's gonna hire me to like sound the way I do sound, I'm just gonna start making my own songs. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. So that's
Hmm.
the journey of me starting to learn how to write. And at first, the first record was very collaborative, where I got other composers and other lyricists on board, and
Hmm.
everything, like it was a pandemic production. So we all worked remotely. We did our parts and kind of made 5 songs together. And
Awesome.
because we were all very bored and, at home, very frustrated.
Hmm.
So I also got a lot of these services for very, very cheap because everyone was, like
Oh,
just like
that's true.
wanting to
That's true.
just keep working in this time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for the team I assembled back then because I still work with them a lot, very actively.
That's awesome.
And yeah, and then, I kept doing that, and slowly the team became smaller because I have learned to do a lot of this by myself now. So alongside releasing, when I was releasing, I also was focusing a lot on learning these skills and building the
Hmm.
craft myself. So
Interesting.
yeah.
Sorry to interject. Quick question there. You said five people were needed, or unless I misheard that. So
Mhm.
who are these five people that you need? So obviously you have a singer, that's you. You have your composer, and then I guess what other personas do you need to put music out?
So singer slash performer,
Hmm.
lyricist, composer, producer, and mix master engineer. And then in
Gotcha.
some cases, like you may also have an assigned recording engineer, but that is
Mhm.
usually rare. Like most of us go to at least literally any recording studio. We may have a preference in terms of, array, if he's there today, can you please put him during my session?
Makes sense.
Because
Yeah, kind of like when you
yeah,
go for a haircut and want your person to be there.
exactly. That's
Yeah,
very accurate.
makes
Yeah,
sense.
that's very correct. Yeah.
And this is all so interesting to me. And granted, this is the first time I'm hearing about these details, and these are stuff I've always wondered. So I'm just, like swimming with questions right now. So,
Hmm.
um, would have, or at least my uninformed, person would have thought that the person that writes the lyrics would also in some way be composing the song. Because isn't composing just the tune of the song? So how can you write the lyrics when you don't know the tune? And which comes first, or is it all, doesn't matter? Like, what's going on here?
So that's what I meant, that my team has become smaller because I now compose, write, and sing by
Okay.
myself. So
Wow.
typically, how it goes is in the industry is that a composer has a scratch, which is basically like a very basic scanning of a track. So you put like a metronome click. So like
Hmm.
1, 2, 3, 4. So like if you put, and then you put a melody line on it. So
Okay.
da, 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 da. So it's literally sung like da, 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 and that's what we send to the lyricist. And then lyricist
Okay.
puts words in that da, 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 da.
Hmm.
So like this is a very easy, like
Of
I'm
course. Yeah,
really
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
reducing it to like make it very easily consumable. But
Of course.
usually this is how it works. Sometimes certain lyricists, like who you probably become good friends with or something, they'll send you like, oh, I have written these lines. See if you want to do
Hmm.
something. So like, say
Wow.
someone sends you the line, and then that sometimes there is some composition sitting in your bank, it's sitting in your
Hmm.
archives, and then those words somehow fit that composition miraculously. That also has
Interesting.
happened to me.
And it's just like a happen chance thing, right? It just happens. It
These a
clicks
lot of
sometimes.
that's the magic and addiction behind this work, right? It is so magical. Like when I had a co-composer for that particular record, there literally was this song. It's called "Tum Mujhe Jante Ho." It's actually one of my most streamed tracks so far.
Cool.
And I had written the chorus, and he had a different song with the verse. And we
Got
just
it.
like I was like, can you remove that chorus and fit this there? See how it
Uh-huh.
sounds. And it became a whole song. So it's like really exciting, this kind of collaborative work.
So
So,
did you just teach yourself all these skills then, now that you said that you do all of these?
so a lot of it is definitely instinctive, and it's a product of what you have learned and listened to since you were little. That's why I always tell people that if you want to do your own music, you have to listen to a lot because you have to be very limitless. But
Mm-hmm.
the fact is, after having like done this very, very regularly now, and now I have reached a point where I'm starting to write for other people as well. I can say with a lot of confidence that just like singing, a lot of songwriting can be learned like a skill. So if you read poetry, read Urdu and Hindi poetry on a regular basis. If you again listen, there are tons and tons of, songwriters doing workshops, teaching different kinds of techniques. And of course, read books, like basically broaden your imagination
Yeah,
as much as
for
you
sure.
can. And it really helps. Like at first I thought, oh, songwriting is just something like some people can do it, some can't. But it's really not like that. It is definitely a skill that can be learned and that can be, fully, okay, maybe you will not be like 100 in the field, but
Of
you can
course.
definitely reach a 70, 80. And that's pretty great, pretty damn good. So,
Yeah, so many insightful things from what you just said, especially looking at my total of 8 seconds of experience with. Actually, it's not even sound songwriting. It's more like music production. I don't know the right word, but for my podcast intro, I had to record. I just wanted an 8 second, intro theme, if you will. And then I just went on GarageBand and I knew in my head what I wanted. And then it took me like 2 attempts on the piano section of GarageBand and it turned out fine. So I'm actually curious to maybe you can later check that out and tell me how you feel about that, my first
Yeah,
attempt at doing this.
why
But
not?
but my question was something, and this is also something that I've struggled with. So I wanted to write music or make music, probably is a better way to say it, forever. Like I don't even remember how long ago I've first wanted to do that. The thing that trips me is sometimes I'll have a tune. So I have a few different tunes in my back pocket that I've just collected over the years. Where I struggle with is what instruments come in to make that tune. So do
Mhm.
you have any thoughts on that, or am I going about it the wrong way?
So see now, I am like my primary craft within music is vocals.
Hmm.
So my approach is always to think vocally first. But that
Interesting.
doesn't mean everyone should have to think that way. A lot
Hmm.
of people go with instruments and melody first, and that's totally fine as well. Like
I
because
see.
I am primarily a singer, I always start with that कि
Makes sense.
गाने का chorus, what is the chorus, what
Hmm.
is the hook, or what is the first verse, and then the details of the instrumental and the track kind of comes in later. That's what
Hmm.
happens most of the time. But to answer your question specifically, there is no one way to do any of this.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
the beauty of the entire process is that there are 100 different ways that works for 100 different artists. So the key is also to try alternate ways because sometimes we
Hmm.
feel like, oh, this is what I can do, only to realize that there was something else entirely that suited you a lot more, but you didn't allow yourself the chance to even try it out.
That's so true.
So, yeah.
And it really sounds like what you're saying is there should just be, earlier you said you used the word limitless, and I think it's making sense because I don't need to necessarily, or any person doesn't need to be constricted to acoustic guitar tune only. Maybe that same tune would sound better in a different way, maybe using piano or something. So
Yeah,
it
and
makes
then,
sense. Yeah.
with modern day production, it's really like the number of kinds of sounds you can use. It's like
Hmm.
countless. Like there
Yeah,
is so
truly,
much, right?
truly.
Like if you
Every time
just
I open,
buy,
yeah,
yeah, if you
every
just
time I
go
open
and
GarageBand, there's a
purchase.
new, exactly,
Exactly. If you and GarageBand is like, of course, a very basic software, but I'm saying even
exactly.
like if you are supposed to go to like a pro level, production tool or a DAW as we call it, you you buy one pack of VSTs and that's like a whole other universe to work with. So, everything production wise has evolved so much, like in terms of sounds you can just use in your track.
Hmm.
It's a lot and it's really beautiful. So there's a
For
lot you can do
the
with it.
For the uninitiated, can you go over please what DAW and VST stands for? Sorry.
Oh yeah, sorry. So VST is basically, I actually wouldn't go into the uh,
Like just
full,
broad level, what are
yeah,
these
yeah.
things? How do they come in
So,
for production?
so for example, you have a particular song that you are thinking is sounding good, like you said, on a
Yeah.
guitar, right?
Hmm.
So when you go on a software, the software is the DAW.
I see.
Okay, that's the DAW. So
Makes
you go
sense.
on, say, a Logic Pro.
Hmm.
That's where you are like creating a track for that particular song. Track means the musical part of it,
Yeah.
not the vocal.
Yeah.
So when you are creating that track, and say you use a keyboard to just play the melody,
Hmm.
okay, you can use that same melody and apply tons of different kinds of sounds. It can be an electric piano, it can be an
Yeah.
acoustic guitar. So
Hmm.
those sounds are known as VSTs within the
Okay.
production software.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see.
So there are
Gotcha.
many different soundscapes which are not even real manual instruments. They are
Hmm.
created by different kinds of people, you know, and that's why I said like like you buy one pack of new VSTs, it's a whole new universe
Okay.
that you can
That
explore
makes
in, because
sense.
it's like
Mhm.
fully new kinds of sounds that a lot of them may not even exist manually or naturally in the universe. Someone has created
Yeah.
it, you know.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of fun.
So cool. So
Correct.
to pull it back just a little bit, maybe you could start with, you mentioned some of the best things that have been within the past 2 years. So do you mind sharing a quick highlight reel of what some of those nice things have been? And then we can go over maybe how those came.
So,
I know
see,
Netflix is one of them. Sorry.
yeah. See, doing the project for Netflix, definitely, yes, it's great, but I wouldn't still think of it like as the highlight, because
Okay.
on the daily, like I have worked with other OTTs as well, and when you are like a professional industry profession, it's like your voice goes to different platforms. So that's
Mhm.
great that it has happened for me. But
Mhm.
within the diaspora of Netflix, I was actually invited to a thing where they wanted to celebrate a lot of fellow women creators who had contributed into the success of Netflix. That was a very special day for me,
Wow,
because
awesome.
like some it's not a linear journey always, right? In this
Mhm.
field, sometimes there are like months go by, and if you are someone who has like I have fed off of this excitement and validation since I was very little, right? So I get
True,
bored very
true.
easily. So even if things are going fine to me, and it's just like really slow, like nothing's really happening right now. Like what is it? And it's not like I'm not, I'm sustaining fine. It's just like nothing crazy, and nothing crazy can keep happening to you. That's just like not how life works, right? And so that it came to me at a time like that when I was feeling really like saturated, like things are like not moving forward. So even that little bit of a recognition meant a lot to me coming from Netflix directly, because going into that entire room full of amazing, beautiful women that I have admired for so many years. Like I never imagined that I would see myself standing beside them as an
Yeah,
equal, like
yeah.
so quickly. It was not some, and moreover, it's a personal victory because I'm a first generation artist in my family. So it's a huge, huge glass
Interesting.
ceiling being broken. Like I'm really like after me, couple of cousins have like are now going into media and entertainment. So it's a huge personal, victory for me that maybe I am changing a little bit of a
Yeah,
mindset here. So
that's
that
awesome.
was, yeah, that was definitely highlight number one. The other two would take me a little bit back, not really in the last 2 years, but
Huh?
the f- one more would be the first time I released an original song. That song happened very randomly. I was doing a lot of covers on YouTube at the time, and it was
Okay.
actually going really well for me. And
I think I do remember. Was this around 2018-ish time?
2019,
19, yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think obviously because of our common friend Ankan, I think
correct.
he used to be really good
We used
at
to
sharing.
share, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
So I think that's how I was exposed to one of those many covers, and I was like, this is legit. Like, this is as legit as anything that I've seen.
Yeah.
So,
So I was doing that a lot at that time. And this particular time, I actually went on a trip with Ankan and a couple of other friends, right, to Rishikesh. And I
mhm,
thought, oh, like, he and I have done a lot of photography, video, fun projects together.
yeah.
So this was a great opportunity for us to shoot some stuff in the mountains. So I thought, why not do a cover there and let's do a travel mashup or something like that. Back then, it was still not so mundane, and,
Yeah.
everyone wasn't doing it yet.
True,
But then
true.
I don't know why. I just thought like if we are doing something all the way up there, so far away, and like whatever, let's just do something original instead of doing another cover. It was a very
Hmm.
random idea. And again, I sat down with two friends. Someone else, like that person produced and composed it. One more guy came in and wrote it. Anudat and Tripurari, these guys came on board. We made the song, and they were like, what do you want it to be about? Should it be a love song? I was like, yeah, but like a love song for myself, like not really. Because frankly, I wasn't in love with anybody for a long time, so it wasn't a feeling I was able to like kind of relate
Yeah,
to.
yeah,
Like I would just like rather keep it authentic and say what I actually experienced because I feel like otherwise people kind of catch on. They can tell if you're not being truthful, right? So
yeah.
the song was called Asma. And that song actually ended up changing the trajectory of my entire career because I was doing all of these covers and they were getting a lot of views and traction. But
Mhm.
that one original just like touched so many people in such a personal way. The kind of DMs and message, and of course, like that song kind of found its peak in numbers much later. But even
Interesting.
the few people that were listening at the time, the DMs and the messages and the comments just like warmed my heart beyond measure. They were just like, you know, this made me realize that I can choose myself first and things like that. And a lot of people really in very messed up spirals where they are in unreciprocated, love situations and things like that, where they've come and listened to the song and they have made real changes in their lives. And I was like, yes, this is the kind of work I want to do. Like this is real art that can cause
Uh-huh.
someone to stop and be like, oh my God, what
Yeah.
am I doing? Like someone, if I can make someone stop and think, or if I can make someone stop and just like feel anything, you know,
True, true.
and that
Especially as
too,
an artist.
yeah, and that too through something original, not something that somebody else made. So that like
Exactly.
it meant a lot. That was number two. And one more is this was a little bit even further in the
Mm.
back in the day. I actually went to like a friend's wedding, very, very close childhood friend of many years. And her grandfather had been, you know, suffering from Alzheimer's for a very long time.
Mhm.
And you may know, or may not know this, that, but like dementia and Alzheimer's patients find a lot of comfort in music. And this is a
Mhm.
man who hadn't spoken in several months. Like he was having to be assisted in every single activity of his life. Like the smallest to smallest things you can imagine, like picking up a glass of water to use in the washroom. And I just went on stage because, I'm a singer. If I'm at a wedding, people will ask me to sing invariably. It's going to happen. So at the Sangeet, I got up and just sang Ajib Dasta. And I still remember I got down and he held my hand and he just went like, Bahut achhe. And everyone was like, he's speaking. Are you serious? And I don't know, oh my
Wow.
God, that just stuck with me for so long. I couldn't believe it. Like, I didn't know that there was such power in music, and then rendered through me, it becomes even more special, right? That I sang that and it touched him like that. It was very special.
It's rather telling that all three of your examples, or all the three highlights that you referenced, all had to do in some way or the other about the impact of your music, and not exactly stuff like sometimes they're called just vanity measures, like, oh, I have these many subscribers, whatever, blah blah, or that one song. So I think that's really cool in that it, clearly you have a mission that you're on with this whole musician type of thing, which, at least to my uninitiated worldview, was not the most common thing. Because if I imagine myself as a musician, like, sure, a couple DMs would be great, but I don't know, maybe I would be more focused on um if how many downloads my thing got on Spotify, or how many live shows I played at, or what's the biggest crowd I've played for, etc. So yeah, maybe I'm outing myself there, but in a way, for you to not go down that path, I think is very, very telling. And I think that's really cool that this is what drives you, and not that other stuff. Not that there's anything wrong with that other stuff.
Yeah, so I think here what is needed, see, first of all, to survive in this space, it's very important to have a healthy mindset. So when what happens is a lot of people when they come here to Bombay to become a musician and things like that, there's a huge confusion between fame and success. They are very different and they don't always go hand in hand. If you are a first generation musician, what is success? You need to define it very clearly. It could simply be able to make a living or not out of your art, because that in itself is a huge, huge success. Like you have, because understand this, there is no guidance here. It's a constantly ever evolving, very, very dynamic industry, and you have zero idea how to navigate it. So everything you are doing is trial and error. There is no parent, there is no godfather, godmother telling you what to do. So if you have navigated those very, very turbulent times and reached a point in your life where you can make rent, you can take care of yourself.
Mhm.
If you can send some money back home, then nothing like it. First
Yeah.
of all, that needs to be defined. What is success? Now, oftentimes, with this success, if you are very, very lucky, something clicks for you and fame comes your way. But if you come just for the fame, and let's face it, with our current attention spans, fame does not stay like for a very long time. You'll
Yeah.
become probably viral one day, but how are you going to sustain yourself if you don't have a
Exactly.
solid base of your craft? You're not going to stay in this industry because that one video, there is someone new and younger doing it better than you 2 months later. People are going to forget. But if you are good at your craft, you will stick in the industry and you'll keep getting work. That will be your peak, but it's not like you will not survive. So that is very necessary. Like if we keep on looking at numbers while we are creating, especially in indie music, if you keep doing that, it's very difficult to kind of sustain yourself with a healthy mindset. That's at least my experience. I mean, it's not a one, anyway,
Of
like I
course.
said, there are countless ways to do all of these things. So this is what I have learned from my journey. So
No, I think that's a really helpful call out for anyone that's considering doing this. On that same note, say I think I'm talented, as a musician. I have done some work, I'm practicing and such. I plan to make the move to Mumbai. What, how can I get my first singing gig? Or is there a blueprint for that or not really?
there is no blueprint for that because first thing is that a lot of what happens here is really based on network.
Mm,
So, and there's a lot of gatekeeping, to be honest. Like
mm,
people have their own preferred friends and company, and they are not always going to be very welcoming of a new person.
mm,
Because again, a lot of us have made it, made a space here with a lot of hard work. And it's very easily could be taken over by just like some newer, shinier person, you know. So there is no blueprint, to be very honest. Use Instagram, go to, parties, go to networking events, talk to people. But most importantly, before you do all of that, like be very solid at one thing. Like jack of
yeah.
all trades, master at one. There needs to be one thing you are really good at. So if you are like in music, you write, you produce, you compose, and you see, one of these has to be like really, really solid.
Mm,
Something that will be your primary thing to fall back on. So like mine is singing. I do
yeah.
everything else, but like my solid income comes from singing. So
Mm,
pick one thing that you'll be like really great at, so people keep coming back to you for that. And of course, initially find ways to offer your services. I know there's a lot of debate on this particular thing that should
mm-hmm.
you work for exposure? Should you work for without payment and things? Of course, demand a token amount. But in the initial times when you are building your network and you're building your relationships, there will be moments that you're just probably not going to get money. And that's okay. You're building certain relationships. You would probably have to think of it as giving away free samples of your product when you're starting a business. How are people supposed to know how good or bad your
That's a good
service or
point.
your product is if they never try it? And why should they try it? The thing is, in situations like this, like if we are hiring a session artist, like someone to come and play the guitar in a studio, then
Hmm.
I am already spending hours in the studio where I'm paying the studio a certain rent. Now, if
Right.
you are not a good guitarist, how am I supposed to take that bet on you? So, if I'm taking
Uh,
that bet on you, it's easy for me to take that bet if if you offer to do the first project either at a subsidized rate or for free. I see
right.
that
And
once,
then you
and the
can make that relationship. Yeah,
next time I'll be
exactly.
like, oh, I want this person. Like, this person
Yeah.
was great. Let's get
Yeah.
them again. So
Amazing.
certain things in the beginning, I feel like there needs to be some openness to understand that, some relationships need to be built in the initial stages. So have a little bit of flexibility, but at the same time, know when to stop and not get exploited. So
Yeah,
yeah.
so many helpful call outs there. You also mentioned Instagram. So I do want to talk about that just a little bit because again, it feels like if I were a good singer, I would probably, be sharing reels and such of me myself singing and but I guess what happens from there, can you share anything that you've learned from your, journey of growing on Instagram that has helped you or that would serve well for somebody that's just getting started?
See, Instagram works very similar to a very typical Indian society, to be very honest. The algorithmic preferences are very specifically to a lot of times a very, how do I say this? Like a very straitjacket expectation of beauty and visuals, what is what you would generally find very desirable outside, like in general society, is what usually also gets pushed very easily on Instagram. So for me personally, I have not found the platform to be that much of a important tool beyond
Hmm.
just being able to DM people and get them to get in touch with me. Like
Gotcha.
my my reels there or my content there has never really
Hmm.
that hasn't done as much, especially organically, it hasn't done much for me. Like that
Hmm.
is my stance. There are a lot of people for whom it's been life changing, but I'm being very honest, for me, it has not been that way.
Hmm.
And that's okay. Like there are different platforms that work for different people, different methods work for different people. So,
Yeah.
but if somebody were to, be starting on Instagram, I would say at this point, it's very necessary to have a bit of a unique style of
Hmm.
content because,
Interesting.
uh, like people should have a thought that, oh, like if you see a certain person's reel or whatever piece of content, before even really consuming it, it should have that USP that this is theirs. So that kind of a recall value or that kind of almost standardization, consistency in the style and graphics in the visuals, in your aesthetics, personal or otherwise, that's very much needed. Um, Otherwise, I highly just recommend using the you know, creating a visually very, appealing feed, which is going to help you kind of broaden your
True.
contacts,
True. True.
through the platform itself. So like a lot of contacts, like a lot of connections I have built has been through that, where I have just uh, commented on somebody's photo or sent a certain response to a story, and it could be something very simple, like literally like, oh my God, Max Relate or whatever. Like, though that's literally how I made a lot of friends in the field. It happened very randomly. So that way, through connections in terms of DMs and all, it's been really great for me. But like I said, the other aspect, like the virality aspect has like not worked for me yet. So I don't know. Not
Yeah,
really
and
have much to
no,
say about that.
that's still helpful because what you already said about the USP bit that it should be immediately very clear to the viewer what they should be expecting, for lack of a better word, when they click on a reel that I've posted should be there, which I don't think it's there for me as well right now. So that's
Hmm.
already a helpful pointer in terms of stuff that I could start doing that uh,
Yeah.
that covers that gap, so to speak. So no, that's still helpful. And yeah, as for the virality itself, I feel like what I have at least experienced is the trick is to just do the thing and then not worry about virality, because every creative friend that I speak to has shared that it's always the stuff that you have absolutely no expectation for doing well that does the best. It just so happens
Absolutely. Absolutely. It
across
is so
YouTube,
frustrating.
across
Oh my
Instagram.
God.
Yeah. And they're like, what is the point of me sinking so many hours into this really important episode or thing that nobody cared for? And then I put out this half-ass, half-baked piece of content, and people are going crazy about this. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's best to
It
just not,
happens.
even
Don't
worry
even
about
think
that.
about it. Yeah. Like that's
Exactly.
it. If it happens, it happens. Like, the only
Right.
thing you can see, the only thing we can control from ourselves, from our side, is consistency and the quality.
True. True.
The algorithmic machinery is really like out of our control. What are we supposed
Yeah.
to do about it? And
Right.
that's really nothing. There's nothing that what your friends have said is so accurate, because I remember this one time, this was 2019 monsoon, I think, that
Hmm.
I booked, like monsoon, of course, in Bombay is pretty bad, right?
Yeah.
So this is again that phase of time when I'm doing a lot of covers very, very frequently. Like two very well produced cover videos in a month. And
Hmm.
I recall the fact that I actually booked this photography studio. They had a bunch of different backdrops and stuff. So I thought, okay, I'll do 3 videos within this one studio itself. So I had booked the entire studio for 6 hours. The thought was to take 2 hours for each video. And what happened, I don't know. After the second video, I was trying to curl my hair because I don't want to end up looking the same. So you want to keep doing some differences in your
Oh,
makeup
yeah.
and your hair to kind of look
Huh.
a little different, and you change your clothes and all of that. I was doing that and I burnt my finger, and that caused a lot. Like I lost a whole kind of hour trying to tend to that, because
Yeah.
health comes first. You have to take care of, like,
Obviously. Right.
obviously a burnt finger first. And by the time I have gotten ready and stood in front of the camera for that last video, we only had 25 minutes in hand. And we went by so fast, and that is my most viewed video so far. 13 or 15 million views on that goddamn video. So, like it just boils my blood, because I took about 3 hours, 4 hours with the previous
Uh-huh.
stuff. Not even half of that many people watch those. I put so much effort trying to look fly and look good and feel good and all of those things. And I actually had time to like choreograph those little moments and direct the
Right.
situation better. But this, I literally just stood. There was a dummy mic in front of me. He moved around a bit. I quickly went and changed my clothes. And that's it. We were like, we'll see what to do and edit. Yeah, we'll figure something out. That was my most viewed video so far. How frustrating. So, you never know with
Mhm.
these things, like what's gonna click,
Right.
who's gonna resonate with, like there's no guarantee of any of it.
You said 13 to 15 million. I did not expect, when you say it did well, I did not expect you to be chilling in the 10 million North category. So that's news to me. Is that on YouTube? Because
Yeah, yeah.
that's
Yeah,
crazy.
it's,
What?
yeah.
Okay. Wow. Uh,
Look.
I'm just shocked. You just dropped that, just out of nothing.
No, like
No,
it,
but
it
yeah,
had reached the million club very quickly, very, very
got
quickly. I think within the first 10 days, it had reached there. But it took
okay.
a while to get to 10 million and plus. That
Right.
was
Of
a
course.
longer journey. But
Uh-huh.
even I didn't realize, like, what is happening? Why is
Uh-huh.
everyone watching this and not the other wonderful things I've done with my life? How
I'll have
frustrating.
to go check that out. Yeah, it's been a while since I've been on your channel. I'll be on the lookout for any fingers that look,
I
wonky.
burnt.
And then real quick before I let you go here, what are some of your, immediate future plans? Do you have any exciting projects on the horizon, or what's it looking like for the next year or two, maybe? Anything that you can share, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good addition. There's a lot of things that I'm not allowed to speak about, but
Right, right.
I'm just like focusing, frankly, there was a bit of a break in terms of releasing for me.
Hmm.
After 2021, I had not put out a lot of music for a while. So right now I'm just kind of focusing this year to kind of get back in that game. This year I've already released 4 songs so far. I want to do at least 2 or 3 more.
Hmm.
So that is literally the only benchmark I had for myself, that this year I have to release 7 to 8 songs, which I have fully written and composed by myself. If I
Wow.
do that, it's going to be a huge thing for me, because then I can really confidently then go ahead and pitch my work and pitch my writing to other people. And
Hmm.
then eventually, honestly, I really would like to write for films and compose and maybe have some music of my own. Like so far, I have worked in the films, but like it's more just as a singer. I want to do more as like a songwriter and composer as well. And
Makes
of
sense.
course, I'm hoping to, you know, learn, like now I'm also starting to learn a little bit of production. So I'm hoping that that also kind of makes the entire process a lot more fun and exciting. But like, it's honestly just like, you know, the entirety of my existence now is focused on just doing more of all of this. Like I'm not aiming
Yeah.
for very specific milestones or any of that. I just want to write. I just want to release more. I want to sing more. I want to do more gigs, and
Hmm.
just keep doing all of like music things constantly.
Yeah.
Like that is all there is, and of course reasonably constantly, so I can keep like some rest time as well for myself. But like,
Of course. Yeah, because I'm
yeah.
sure the burnout factor there is very
Yeah, you have to
real and
be
a very
very, very, very
huge
careful. Otherwise,
danger. Right.
it gets like once
Exactly.
if you shut down, it's very difficult to like wake
Yeah.
yourself back up again. So,
Especially with stuff like art. Yeah. I mean, it's not like you can flick a switch and be running along like an engine, you know. It's like
yeah,
comes from within. You need to let it simmer,
yeah,
the creativity.
exactly,
Yeah.
there's no specific way always, right, to do
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
things. So if your mind is like not well rested, so
You will
then
struggle.
you will struggle a lot.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Um, Yeah, as you know, Trishita, as somebody that's always really had a big passion for, I don't want to say music, it just sounds kind of flat, but I do kind of have always wanted to, make music, write music, just do things around music. Clearly, I think that ship has sailed in most ways. But for those reasons and other reasons that I'm running out of time to mention, it's been so great to talk to you about all that you do. You've been so illuminative, especially on aspects such as the songwriting part itself. I had no idea that the entire feedback that you mentioned, the cycle that goes through while writing every single song is so cool to me, not something I'd considered. And yeah, really appreciate you sharing your knowledge, and wish you the very, very best with that amazing magical voice that you have.
Thank you so much, Naman, and thank you so much for having me here for this, because we come a very long way. This is not how I expected us to reconnect, but it's been like a lot of fun. And I'm always up to like share some gyan, with people. So this is a
No,
great way
that's
to do
perfect.
that.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
guess finally, I think it would be remiss to not shout out Ankan. So, guys, any listener that is interested in photography, go check out Trippy Snapper. He is legitimately one of the best photographers I know in my life. So,
Yeah,
do that.
he's great.
That brings us to the end of episode 31 of the Ready Set Do podcast. Thank you all for sharing these conversations with those that continue to benefit from them. If you would like to support me, the easiest way to do that is by subscribing to my YouTube channel and or leaving me up to a 5-star rating on Spotify. Catch you all in the next one. New episodes every Wednesday.